We've seen a lot of unrest in France recently about pensions, about migrants, about all sorts of stuff. This is something a little bit different. This is more like your American-style BLM, burn everything down because a criminal got shot type of riot going on. It's a race riot. It's a series of migrant riots. Here they are breaking into the police station. I mean, scenes very, very reminiscent of what happened in the summer of 2020. All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Second hour of American Journal has begun. Still so much to talk about on today's program. And we move now to international news. What's happening in France and the rest of Europe is something to behold. France was hit with a third night of riots on Thursday, which saw clashes in towns and cities across the country, schools burned, and shops looted on Paris's Rue de Rivoli. Police made almost 700 arrests across the country. President Emmanuel Macron will, on Friday afternoon, chair another crisis meeting after a third night of riots following the death of a 17-year-old at the hands of police. On the agenda will be whether to impose a state of emergency, as politicians on the right are calling for. Around 40,000 police were deployed on Thursday night, but it was not enough to stop trouble flaring in towns and cities across France. Buildings, including schools and libraries, were burned and police attacked with fireworks and missiles. In total, 667 people were arrested, Interior Minister Darmanin announced, and 247 police officers injured in what he called a night of rare violence. We have videos of this is the initial shooting that took place that sparked all of this. We've seen a lot of unrest in France recently about pensions, about migrants, about all sorts of stuff. This is something a little bit different. This is more like your American-style BLM, burn everything down because a criminal got shot type of riot going on. It's a race riot. It's a series of migrant riots. Here they are breaking into the police station. I mean, scenes very, very reminiscent of what happened in the summer of 2020. There you've got some non-native French occupiers throwing things at police and fighting them. I mean, isn't it interesting how this works? Isn't it interesting that people say we don't have a global government, yet it seems like all of these separate nations are all going through exactly the same thing at exactly the same time? Isn't that curious? So let's keep going through some of these videos. Tons of videos of this. Let's go to, I think we just played this, but clip 16, a large shopping center in the suburbs of Paris, completely destroyed by fire. Fiery but peaceful. Fiery but peaceful conflagration there. 40,000 police sent to confront French protesters. You can see clip 15 here. It looks like a absolute war zone as crowds of police. But, you know, this is diversity. This is globalism, right? This is your country on globalism. They might preach diversity and togetherness and equity, but then you fall for the lie. You buy into their deception, and what you end up with is foreign populations forcibly transferred onto your soil, mobs of angry non-citizens burning your city down, and corresponding battalions of police rushing in to put the boot on any dissent, and then blaming the right wing for it. Probably there you saw a guy shooting a gun into the air. Here more just mob looting taking place. Clip number 19 is pretty amazing. Let's bring the audio up for clip number 19 as a sports car crashes through the front of a building and the mob enters in. All right, no justice, no peace, right? I mean, this is how you get justice. This is some sort of statement about the treatment of teenagers by police. No, it's an excuse to riot, and that's what they're doing. Smashing up a Nike store in central Paris, clip 21. Just everything's on fire. Okay, so that's the Nike store, which apparently is very offensive to them. Clip 22, looting, violent riots spread to several cities in France. Yeah, it's that. Oh, gay Paris. I just love hearing that beautiful French language. Insane. Protesters are now seizing weapons and ammunition from police vehicles in France. Here's clip number 23. So, you know, it's now a well-armed military mob. As again, just foreign imports, just people, right? It's a little bit different. Here they're burning a train. That train, I don't know, loves the cops or something. There's no reason behind it, right? There's no logic to this. Here they're burning the largest library in Marseille, called the Alcazar. So there you go. Burning that, and there's a gigantic pillar of smoke. If you're a radio listener, you really got to go to Band.video and see these videos, because they are something else. So those are just some of the latest here. But you get also very illuminating responses to this by the authorities in France. Now, it's got to be embarrassing for old Macron, because he's been forced to leave some globalist confab somewhere else to return home to deal with the consequences of a previous globalist confab. It's got to be embarrassing. You're hanging out with all your friends, and you're like, sorry, I can't stay. I know we're supposed to do that thing tomorrow, but it's like my policies have led to the entire country burning, and everybody hates each other, and my country's on the brink of civil war. I think I got to go home. I think I got to go home early a little bit, you guys. Sorry, it's a crisis. Sacre bleu.
Yeah, but you could have never predicted this would happen. Yeah. Like, never.
Who would have thought?
Actually, funny enough, these riots, they resemble like when the migrants actually came into France. We were playing videos where like they were like running, you know, into the country, and they were like super pumped to be there. They're like, yeah. It's like, I wonder how that's going to end.
Yeah, it ends about as you expect. So again, illuminating is the word to describe the reaction to this, because you've got basically two reactions. One that is in tune with and acknowledges and exist within the realm of reality, and then you've got the mainstream response. So you see what's happening there. You literally have mobs of tens of thousands of Africans, North Africans, and Middle Easterners running around, firing guns in the air, robbing police district precincts, burning libraries, setting fire to things because a 17-year-old got shot. Again, apparently he was shot while like trying to run over people. So he was an Algerian youth named Nahel M. And the report is that he endangered cyclist and pedestrian before being shot by police, and also has a very long criminal history. 17 years old, he has a long criminal history. The 17-year-old French-Algerian Nahel M., who was shot and killed by a police officer as the suspect raced away from a traffic stop, reportedly endangered a cyclist and a pedestrian before the shooting. The fact may complicate the subsequent arrest of the decorated police officer in the case, who has been charged with homicide. And now, because he is an immigrant, they are rioting over this and acting like this shooting is somehow, again, just, you know, the consequence of or the reaction of a racist society. I mean, it's exactly the same playbook as Black Lives Matter. It's exactly the same playbook as all these things. But here's the dichotomy, okay? This is Zemmour, who is a far-right extremist French politician who clearly just has a appropriate and accurate view of the situation. He says on the riots, quote, "We are in the early stages of a civil war. That's obvious. It's an ethnic war. We can see clearly that it's a race war. We see what forces are involved. We need somebody determined and firm. The problem, above all, is the number of immigrants." Yeah, seems reasonable. Seems to be reflective of the evidence before our eyes. And you can compare and contrast that with Macron's reaction to this outbreak of ethnic violence. Macron announces more police will be deployed to control riots, calls on parents to prevent their children from participating, and says video games have intoxicated the rioters.
Lol. You know, if you think about it, it's actually, I don't know why they're rioting. I kind of, this is an offhanded comment, but if you think about it, France is no more dangerous than the countries that they fled, right?
Wow, it's almost like it's the people, not the country, that bring the violence. Incredible This is shocking, a shocking revelation. Hey, maybe it's just a second French Revolution. Maybe when they're saying Allah Akbar, that's French for liberty, fraternity, equality. You know, maybe this is, they're freedom fighters, or maybe they're violent rioters riding for a criminal. Maybe that's what it is. All right, welcome back, folks. We'll move on here in just a second from the French chaos, but there are a few more things that I want to mention about this. We'll do a little compare and contrast as well. But it really can't be overstated what a gigantic disaster France is right now. Zero Hedge has the story. France has fallen. Dramatic footage shows social unrest spreading in third night. Police killing of a 17-year-old during a traffic stop on Tuesday has unleashed 3 consecutive days of social unrest across France. More than 600 people were arrested. Others say 800 people, with a majority of them between the ages of 14 and 18. The unrest is so bad that President Emmanuel Macron left an EU summit in Brussels, where he will hold another emergency security meeting Friday, AFP reported, citing his office. So yeah, that's the meeting I'm talking about. He had to leave. Pretty intense racial and ethnic conflict, completely created, fabricated by the globalist importation of millions upon millions of incompatible foreigners into the French nation. France now, the largest Islamic nation in Europe. I won't get into it too much here, but the history between Algeria and France, it's a very interesting one. It's very interesting. There was a video that went viral a few years ago, and it was misnamed, it was mistitled, and it was originally put forward as like Muslim invaders destroy Virgin Mary statue in Italy. It was supposed to show like Muslims destroying Christian relics, and it turned out it was actually a video from Algeria. I started looking into it, and it's like the French built Algeria. Algeria was not doing too well. It was literally a pirate camp before the French came in, literally built their entire country for them. And now they're being invaded by the Algerians. Again, I won't get too far into the history of Algeria, but you see things on the internet. I actually had a tweet in our daily dispatch yesterday, or in the rundown yesterday at harrisonhillsmith.substack.com, where it was a Muslim guy, and you know, again, they'll talk about diversity, they'll talk about the future is diverse and Europe is changing, it's going through a transformation right now. But then every once in a while you get some like public intellectual Muslim who just like takes the mask off and is just like, Europe destroyed Africa, so now it's time for payback. And that was like literally the quote. He was literally like, Europe destroyed Africa, so now it's our turn. It's like, okay, mask off. First of all, you are not interested in helping or building Europe or being a part of Europe. You're on like a revenge mission. You're on like a mission of destruction here. And it's predicated on the idea that Europe destroyed Africa. When then you look at the history of Africa, and it's like Algeria was in total poverty and was just a bunch of Barbary pirates constantly taking European slaves and selling them to Arabs. And then the French showed up and built the entire city from the ground up and made it beautiful and wonderful, and then left, and then left the place and gave it to you. So the whole thing is nonsensical, absurd, and just a form of neo-colonialism. And it is interesting because, you know, I'm against colonialism, obviously, right? I wouldn't want to be colonized, so why would I want somebody else to be colonized? Treat others as you would like to be treated. It's not that complicated. I don't want some foreign power coming with advanced technology and subjecting me to its rules that are counter to my own beliefs. Right? I'm against colonization. But at least if you're going to have colonization, and you look at the two forms of colonization, I'd rather have the European style, where they are ostensibly are like, we have the white man's burden. We're coming to help you build up your civilization from savagery and treat you the Christian ways. Like, at least they're, even though they're robbing people, even though they're using, military force to subject people to their will, like, I'm against all that. At least they put on the sheen of, like, we're here to help. I sort of prefer that over just like blatant, like, we're coming to tear things down. You destroyed us, now we're coming to destroy you. It's like, you could at least pretend. You could at least pretend that what you're doing is, yeah, I'm the colonist now. Look at me, I'm the colonist now. As they're just like being rescued from a dinghy that's slowly sinking in the ocean. I'm the colonist. Should we get into Tunis and Algeria? What Tunisia was like before colonization? We don't have to get into it. No, but let's compare and contrast these two forms of protesting that are taking place in neighboring countries. We see the protests in France. It looks an awful lot like civil war. Looks an awful lot like senseless, mindless looting, violence for the sake of violence. Oh, it spreads into Belgium. Wonderful. It's an international movement for equality, I'm sure. We can compare that to the farmers in the Netherlands. So do a little compare and contrast. And remember, which one of these protests the media demonizes and calls terrorists and say we must censor them and stop them from organizing and arrest the leaders of? Which one of these do you think is the bad type of protest according to the people in charge? First, let's go to the French videos here, just to remind you of what we're dealing with. Clip 22 or clip 19, any of them really. Clip 19. Let's compare and contrast. Clip 19, which is this. So this is the French form of protesting. Okay, some teenager got shot, so now they're driving sports cars through the front of stores and looting them in a raucous attitude of excitement. Compare that to the evil, bad right-wing protesters in the Netherlands. Clip number 10. Here are the Dutch farmers protesting. Beep, beep, honk, honk. Hello, please don't take our lifestyles. Yes, hello, we like our farms. Please don't drive us off the land. We brought a tractor to show you how mad we are. This is a protest. What's happening in France is a riot. This is peaceful resistance, free speech, demanding redress of grievances. What's happening in France is an orgy of violence, fire, chaos, burning, destruction. Okay? And the farmers are the ones that the media tells you to worry about. The farmers are the ones that get the government cracking down on them. And they really are. Farmers on front line as Dutch divided on war by war on nitrogen pollution. 7 arrested in fresh protest by Dutch farmers. Dutch police arrested 7 people and 2 officers were injured on Thursday as angry farmers renews their protest campaign against the government's environmental plans. Several hundred farmers gathered. Previous protests against plans to cut livestock numbers and possibly close farms to meet emission targets have attracted global attention. Riot police with shields and batons at one point stopped a group of farmers from walking to the Dutch parliament, where lawmakers were debating the farm plans. It's a little bit different of an attitude. Which one do you think will get results? Back, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to open up the phone lines for your calls right now. I'll be taking your calls throughout the rest of the show today. The number to dial is 1-877-789-2539. That's 1-877-789-2539. Give us a call here on American Journal about any and all topics. Still have so very much to talk about. The war in Ukraine, the looming specter of nuclear war with Russia over so-called democracy. And that's worth keeping in mind as we continue our discussion about what exactly is going on in Europe. As after all, the democratic country that we have to save, because if democracy dies in Ukraine, it dies everywhere. If we don't fight them over there, we're going to have to fight them over here. You still falling for this? You still an idiot? I can still say these things? You nod along? Okay, great. I'm going to keep saying it because I'm the military-industrial complex, and you're a sheep. Just insane. Just absolutely beyond anything. Beyond anything we've like at least they had the decency and respect for the American people to pull off the weapons of mass destruction hoax in 2001, 2003. They don't even do that anymore. It's like, take me out to dinner first, guys. If you're going to launch a destructive, decades-long war that impoverishes America, ruins our reputation overseas, kills hundreds of thousands, at least do some sort of hoax to get us into it. They didn't even bother. They're just doing it. They just launched a war. And you're not allowed to ask questions as to why. Feels disrespectful to me. Of course, this is all in line with the World Economic Forum designs for humanity. And we'll get into that a little bit more as the summer Davos meeting of the World Economic Forum is kicked off in China. We're getting video out of it that means we don't have to speculate anymore. We don't have to try to figure out what these people are up to. They're telling us. And you notice you notice what doesn't happen often in China? What we're seeing in France. Certainly not what we're seeing in the Netherlands. Resistance to the government, widespread anger at policy, people standing up against their rulers. Well, not in China. No. This is a problem they're about to solve worldwide, according to the World Economic Forum. But BBC News has this article from just 12 hours ago. Far-right parties on the rise across Europe. I wonder why. Gee, I wonder why. I mean, you could look at the last month of news out of places like France where you've got, a madman terrorist running around stabbing children in their strollers. When you've got a 17-year-old career criminal attempting to run over a cyclist and a child getting shot by cops and your entire country going up in flames as a result. You could look at the outcome of the policies that are pursued by the left, and that might give you some insight into why people are turning away from the left right now. Or you could claim it's because Hitler's been reborn somewhere. You could claim it's the Nazis all over again, which kind of is. Far-right parties on the rise across Europe. France is on a knife edge, holding its breath as unrest spreads across the country, bursting out of the banlieues, the often socially neglected suburbs, after the fatal shooting this week of a 17-year-old from French-Algerian family by police near Paris. These types of riots are not unheard of in France, but the intensity of feeling taking hold across the country, whether amongst those sympathizing with the police or with the ghettos and the victim's family, hasn't been witnessed in France since summer 2005. And while President Macron visibly struggles to get the situation under control, his political nemesis on the far right, Marine Le Pen, with her tough on security, anti-immigration message, may well end up benefiting in the polls. Well, my God, you're saying that this catastrophic situation brought about by policies has people looking to politicians with different policies? Yeah, that's extremely reasonable. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Look around Europe right now, north, south, east, and west, and you see far-right parties of different flavors, nostalgic nationalists, populist nationalists, ultra-conservative with neo-fascist roots, and more, enjoying a notable resurgence. Well, you better get Palantir on the phone. You better get Alex Karp on the phone. I mean, after all, he bragged about single-handedly stopping the rise of the far right in Europe, which I guess you could say he was bragging about single-handedly bringing about the situation that now has Europe in flames, which means maybe he's actually sort of guilty of this. But, it's a brave new world. It's a brave new world these days. So if you want to have some private corporation, international business group use subtle but pervasive AI technology to manipulate, manufacture consent in your population, you just have to deal with it now. And if the people of these countries actually oppose the demands and the policies set forth by your global government cabal, You call them far right, you claim it's Nazism, and you use every structure of the corporate and governmental establishment to crush them relentlessly. Old taboos dating back to Europe's devastating 20th century war against the Nazis and fascist Italy, meaning most voters felt you shouldn't vote ever again for the extreme right, and mainstream political parties refused to collaborate with far-right groupings, are gradually being eroded. What's also being eroded is your legitimacy in claiming things are far right when it's literally people who just want to live their lives. It's just people who just don't want to see their country transformed beyond recognition within a single generation. It's just the most perfectly reasonable thing that anybody, any group of people anywhere in the world has a God-given right to expect, that their government not actively work for their destruction and the dismantling of their entire society. I mean, it's only even considered far right because it's white people. You can go to literally any other country, if it was any country in Africa, any country in the Middle East, going, we're being invaded, we're being colonized, our politicians are colluding with foreigners to, sell out our wealth. No liberal would be against that. It's because they're white people. So you're white, you're an ethnic European, you are therefore the bad guy. And if you have any policies that in any way attempt to uphold or continue the Christian fabric of your society, you are far right. You will be targeted by the AI censors. You will be shut down by the international superstates like the EU and the UN. You will be demonized by the mainstream media. You will be surveilled by your own government, as is happening in Germany with a party that is winning parliamentary seats, but is still considered a domestic terrorist group and is being subjected to the most intense surveillance that's available to the technocratic slave state of modern Germany. The EU's third largest economy, Italy, is run by Giorgia Meloni, head of a party with neo-fascist roots. In Finland, after 3 months of debate, the far-right nationalists, the Finns, recently joined the coalition government. In Sweden, the firmly anti-immigration, anti-multicultural Sweden Democrats are the second largest party in parliament, propping up the right-wing coalition government there. In Greece, last Sunday, 3 hard-right parties won enough seats to enter parliament, while in Spain, the controversial nationalist Vox Party, the first successful far-right party in Spain since the death of fascist dictator Francisco Franco in 1975, outperformed all expectations in recent regional elections. Man, the author of this article does not like democracy, folks. They are not in favor of democracy. That is for damn sure. They're in favor of subjugation. They're in favor of democracy when the majority votes in line with the corporate globalist government. Oppose them, actually love your nation and your people. That's not democracy anymore. Even Germany, still so sensitive about its fascist past, has now put the far-right AfD just ahead of or neck and neck with the Social Democrats, which is the party of the current chancellor. Last weekend, an AfD candidate won a local leadership post for the first time. They called it a political dam breaker. This is democracy in action, and you know the globalists are feverishly working behind the scenes to silence the native Europeans from having their political voice.
You're going to want to pay attention to what I'm about to say in the next 60 seconds. 2 new incredible products are now available exclusively at InfoWarsStore.com. They are both clones of national best-selling products from a major pharmaceutical/supplement maker that are listeners and patriots that are allowing us to private label it at a lower price than you'll find in stores. It's Joint Relief Max and Nerve Renew. Both of these have known documented natural compounds to lower pain and to also make your nerves healthier, which is one of the major reasons nerves get irritated and are more inductive to pain. There's major research behind this all. You need to get Joint Relief Max from InfoWars MD and Nerve Renew from InfoWars MD exclusively at InfoWarsStore.com right now. Introducing them both, 25% off. You'll find them exclusively at InfoWarsStore.com, and they fund their operation.